Hello and welcome to What's in the Night Sky for November 2021. I'm Hayley, and this month there's plenty going on with the moon. There's a chance to spot the elusive Eastern Sea, and there's also a lunar eclipse on the 19th. There's also good opportunities to spot 5 planets this month, along with some meteors, and our constellation of the month, which is Taurus the Bull. Let's begin with the moon. You can see here that I am on the 1st of November in the early hours of the morning. And if I zoom in, you can see that the moon is showing us a crescent phase at the beginning of the month. You may know that the moon has a near side and a far side, that we can only see one face of it from the Earth. But actually, rather than only being able to see 50% of the moon's surface as we view it from Earth, we can actually view around 59% of it over time. This is due to a phenomenon known as libration, which is where the moon appears to rock from side to side and up and down. And that occurs due to the tilt of the moon's orbital plane and because the moon is in an elliptical or elongated orbit around the Earth rather than a circular one. What that means for us as observers is that when the libration is favourable, the moon reveals extra bits of its anatomy for us to explore that we wouldn't otherwise be able to see. This month is a really good opportunity to catch a glimpse of the edge of the Mare Orientale, or the Eastern Sea, which appears on the southwestern limb of the moon. The way to spot it is to see if you can find the Grimaldi crater, which I'm pointing to with my mouse now. A small telescope or a pair of binoculars is ideal for this, if you have them available. The Grimaldi crater has a very dark floor. It's almost resembles a mini sea, and it's often said to be the darkest patch on the moon. So it's a really good target for you to have a go at if you haven't already seen it. And then that you can use that to point you to the Mare Orientale. So you're just looking down at the limb to the south of the Grimaldi crater. And what you're looking for is a dark patch appearing at the edge of the moon. If you can spot that dark patch, then you are seeing the Eastern Sea. If we view the Eastern Sea from space and we get to look at the whole thing rather than the tiny glimpse that we get to see from Earth, you can see that it produces a pattern that looks almost like a bullseye. There's a second opportunity to view the Eastern Sea this month. So the first one is on the 1st of November and the second opportunity comes on the 28th of November. And you can see that on the 28th we've got much more of the moon visible. Again, the early hours of the morning is a good time to see it. And again, look out for the crater of Grimaldi. Goes to the south, look towards the southwestern limb or edge of the moon and see if you can spot a dark patch which will reveal the Eastern Sea to you. Let's take a look at the planets now. I'm going to take us back to the beginning of the month at around 6 o'clock in the morning. And first thing in the morning at the beginning of the month is a really good time to have a go at spotting the planet Mercury. If you look towards the east-southeast, preferably somewhere where you've got a nice flat horizon, then the planet Mercury is sitting in the constellation of Virgo just before the sun comes up. And if we just go to the second, you can see that the moon is coming down to join the planet Mercury on the 2nd and the 3rd. So you've got a really thin crescent moon. You've got the planet Mercury, and here you've got the bright star Spica in Virgo, all forming a triangle together on the 2nd and the 3rd of November. And by the time we get to the 3rd, the crescent that you're looking for on the moon is really, really thin. So the moon is almost new by the time we get to the 3rd of the month. If you've been following space news over the last month, you may have seen that the Bepi Colombo mission, which is currently en route to Mercury, completed the first of its flybys of the planet at the beginning of October. That was really exciting. The mission returned some tantalizing images of Mercury as it did the flyby, and it is due to complete another 5 flybys of the planet Mercury before it finally goes into orbit in 2025. Let's head into the evening twilight now. So I'm going to go to around 5 o'clock and take us over to the south. And I'm just going to take time on a little bit until the sun has properly set. And you can see that at the beginning of the month, just after sunset, we've got the planets Jupiter, Saturn and Venus all in a line looking towards the south. You need a nice clear horizon again to be able to see Venus. Venus is low but very bright, so when you have spotted it, you'll know that you have got the planet Venus. And if we go onwards, so on the 3rd at the moment, here's the 4th, 5th. I'm just going to take us a little bit earlier, and we should be able to see the moon coming in to join these three. So here we are, the 6th, 7th, here comes the moon, 8th, 9th, 10th. So you have an opportunity to see 4 objects altogether from around the 7th, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus and the moon. If we go onwards into the evening, you can see that Venus will set, but you'll still be able to see Jupiter and Saturn. And the beginning of the month is the best time to see Jupiter and Saturn. As the month goes on, they'll be getting lower and eventually getting lost in the evening twilight. So if you haven't managed to see Jupiter and Saturn lately, the beginning of November is a really good time to do that. Let's take a look at this month's partial lunar eclipse now, which occurs on the 19th of November. First thing in the morning, just before the sun rises. So I'm now at 6 o'clock or just after 6 o'clock on the 19th. Just going to spin us around to the west. And you can see that we've got the constellation of Taurus the Bull, which is our constellation of the month this month. And the moon is very unhelpfully hiding behind this tree. And this shows us that the really important thing for viewing this eclipse is to have as flat and as clear a horizon as possible. So you might want to go out and choose a location before the morning of the 19th, because if you are to see any darkening for this eclipse, then you really need to be able to be viewing the moon for as long as possible before it sets. I'm going to cheat and just remove my landscape, which is something that you won't be able to do. And you can see now we have the moon here. And the eclipse, starts at around 6:02, but you're unlikely to notice any darkening of the moon until you get into the darker part of the eclipse, which begins at 7:18. And by that point, the moon will be really, really low, just about to set. And also the sun will be coming up as well. So this is not the easiest eclipse to observe. Definitely worth having a go, especially if you're out already. Perhaps you're observing something else. You might be having a look at Taurus. Then you can see if you can spot some of the eclipse as well. So I'm just going to move time along, and we'll see if we can see the moon beginning to darken. And what happens during a lunar eclipse is that the passage of sunlight to the moon is blocked by the Earth, and the surface of the moon will begin to darken. Sometimes you get to see a bit of an orangey hue on the surface as well. So you can see that we're moving towards 7 o'clock. Still not really able to spot the darkening until we get to 7:18, and you can see the sky is getting really bright now and the moon is getting really, really low. And you can see now that darkening is beginning to occur, almost like a little bite has been taken out of the top of the moon. And you can see that continuing all the way until the moon sets at around 7:30, or earlier for you if your horizon isn't completely clear. And the final thing to add about the eclipse is that the further north you are, the better the eclipse you will see. More of the moon will be in shadow as it sets, the further north you are in the UK. Let's head back into the evening sky now to take a look at our constellation of the month, which is Taurus the Bull. The easiest way to find the constellation of Taurus is to look for the familiar asterism of Orion's belt and use Orion's belt to lead you up to Aldebaran, or the angry eye of the bull. You might be able to see that Aldebaran has an orangey colour to it. It's a red giant star, often described as the eye of the bull glaring back at Orion the hunter. This triangle shape that forms the bull's face is known as the Pleiades open star cluster. It's the closest open star cluster to the solar system. It has around 200 stars in it, and we can think of it as nestled within the horns of the bull. if I put the art on, you'll be able to see how the Pleiades cluster forms the face of the bull. We've got the horns of the bull over here. In Greek mythology, Taurus represents Zeus transforming himself into a white bull to win the affection of the princess Europa. Europa climbed onto the bull's back and he swam across the Mediterranean and took them to Crete. A highlight of the constellation of Taurus is the Pleiades star cluster, often known as the Seven Sisters. I'm just going to take us to a day where the moon is not in the way, because the moon, a full moon or a nearly full moon, will really wash out those Pleiades. So try and observe them when there's not a moon in the way. So you can see it here. Known as the Seven Sisters, there's actually 6 visible to the naked eye with good eyesight under a reasonably dark sky, but actually the open cluster itself contains around 500 stars. A good challenge for you to go out and do is to go out with your naked eye and see how many of them you can spot, and then if you have a pair of binoculars or a small telescope, then you can have a go and see how many more you can spot. The Pleiades is actually my favourite binocular object. It just looks amazing in a pair of binoculars. So if you have a pair of binoculars hanging around at home, any pair of binoculars, take them outside and have a go at spotting the Pleiades with them. They all formed from the same cloud around 100 million years ago, and the 7 brightest are named after the 7 daughters of Atlas, the titan who holds up the sky. I often think that the Pleiades looks like a tiny version of the Big Dipper when you have a look at it in a pair of binoculars. Let's finish off by taking a look at the International Space Station. There's a few opportunities to see it this month. As always, you can find out exactly when they are using the Spot the Station website. The one I want to show you occurs on the 24th, just after 6:15 in the evening. So it's a really good one to go out and have a look at if you've got small children, because it's quite a sociable time to be going out to look for the space station. So have a look at your western horizon, or look towards the west and see if you can spot the space station rising, and then you can track the path that it takes across the night sky. And I'm just going to speed up time, and here we go. You can see the ISS rising. I'm going to speed it up a little bit more, and you can see the path that the ISS will take, and that tends to take about 5 or 6 minutes. That brings us to the end of our night sky tour for November 2021, and I'll be back to tell you what you can see in the sky for December next month.